So I'm just here to kind of open the forum and let you people tell me what you think. You know, this is just an opportunity for people in Saratoga. And the reason it's an opportunity and the reason I do this on Tuesday, much to the chagrin of my wife and kids, is because the people in Saratoga, you people, are the only people that care. You're the people that want to know what we can do to make racing better. You're the people that want to come and see confirmation clinics. The people that want to come to my barn and hear about horse psychology. And if people want to hear about it, I'm willing to talk about it. So I'm here just to talk to everybody and see what you have to say. But I have a couple thoughts. And remember, I probably should read you a disclaimer, but I don't do anything on paper. 10 minutes ago when I was parking my car, I didn't know what I was going to come in here and talk about because I just want it to happen. And that's the kind of speaker I am. I come to somewhere, I know the direction we're heading, but I really don't know what I'm going to say. So one of the things I think we need to realize, and one of the things that I have a real problem with racing, is the fact that racing refuses to accept the fact, or has yet to accept the fact, that they are a sports venue. No different than baseball, football, soccer. It's an entertainment sports venue for fans of horse racing. Boy, I forgot to turn off my phone. How dumb is that? So, that's the end of that. So, being that it's a sports venue, it's no longer, and Saratoga is the only place where this happens, it's not supposed to be just a bunch of crazy gamblers cursing at jockeys and horses and ripping up tickets and spitting and drinking and being unhappy. It's a sports entertainment venue. And the racetrack has to realize that they're here to entertain. And very few venues get that. Saratoga gets it. You go into Saratoga, it's a sports venue. We have the vending trucks, we have the music, we have the roving musicians, we have stuff for the kids, we have face painting, we have pony rides, we have everything. It's a venue. I go to a baseball game, it's a sports venue. I go to a baseball game, I love the sports, but in between innings, it's all kinds of cool stuff. People talking to you, contests, it's all kinds of things. And racing too is a sports venue. But racing doesn't get that. They don't get it at Aqueduct, they don't get it at Belmont, and a lot of venues around the country don't get it. I think there are some that do. I think one of the guys that I admire that seems to have gotten it right is Stronach, because his organization is constantly trying to make racing more fan-friendly, more presentable to the fans, more palatable for the fans. They're the ones making announcements about dropping the food prices and opening OTBs and doing things that are different. And in order to do things that are different, you have to be willing to fail. They're willing to fail. They take a lot of heat. Frank Stronach over the years has taken a lot of heat for the things that he's tried to do. But the things that he tried to do that worked really well. And I'd like to see racing accept the fact that they're a venue and become more fan-friendly. Somebody in racing once said to me, you know, we can't make racing more fan-friendly because we don't pay the help enough. And I would say, perfect example, Disney does not pay their help well, but you go to Disney and you have been pampered and you have been treated well, and it's just because it's a mindset. They teach their employees how to treat other people, how to treat the fans. Why shouldn't every fan leave the races every day saying, man, that was the greatest thing I ever did. I got to tell Aunt Ethel and Uncle Joe, and I got to bring them next time. What a great time we had at the races, not just Saratoga. We all have a great time at Saratoga. Saratoga gets it, but it should be like that everywhere. I think that racing needs to touch the pulse of the surrounding community, even obscure surrounding communities like around Aqueduct, and find out what makes those people tick and what makes those people want to do things and get together as a group and make that happen at the racetrack. I think that we need to touch the pulse of the community and get everybody here. We have done that at Saratoga. We've done that so successfully, but I think everybody sits back when we get back to Belmont and Aqueduct and they scratch their head saying, how can we make Belmont or Aqueduct more like Saratoga? We can't. We can't. We have the summer is free, kids are off from school, parents are home, people plan their vacations around Saratoga. We can't make anything Saratoga, but we can certainly make racing better so that wherever you want to go, whatever track you might go to, it's better. Now, one thing that is at the forefront of everybody in racing is medication and transparency. And a lot of people talk about it, the press talks about it, I talk about it. Again, you look at your sports venues. If racing was to acknowledge that they are a sports venue, then racing, just like baseball, football, soccer, should have a racing commissioner, a commission to govern racing instead of, for better and for worse, instead of, perfect example, Alex Rodriguez gets caught with the wrong drug in his system. He gets the exact same penalty as some poor guy making $600 a week in AAA, struggling through AAA, supporting a family, supporting little kids, barely making ends meet. He gets the exact same penalty because baseball is ruled by a commission and racing is not. Racing is ruled by jurisdiction. Racing, every jurisdiction has their own rules. There's just no, we're trying, don't get me wrong, racing is trying to get their own rules, but it's not governed by one body who can make the decisions on behalf of racing. So I think a racing commissioner would go a long way towards making the public feel much more comfortable with racing and make those decisions, take the decisions out of the hands. Perfect example. If I somehow come up with a positive on one of my horses, I'm going to be judged by a guy that I grew up with. A guy in one of the powers that be in NYRA are going to have to make a decision based on our relationship. I'm not so sure it should be that way. I think we should take that out of the hands of the powers that be and put it in the hands of a central agency or a commission. Now, people say federal jurisdiction. When people hear that, federal, baseball is not regulated by the feds. It's they regulate it by themselves, a baseball commission. And again, if some of my information is foggy, I'm a horse trainer. I'm just putting it out there the way I understand it. So let's not tear me apart if I say the wrong thing. But baseball rules themselves. Football, Pete Rozelle. Hockey has their own commissioner. They all have their own commissioners. Racing is by jurisdiction. It's like if racing was baseball today as it stands, a baseball player could play a game in Pennsylvania using a drug in his system that he cannot play with when he goes to New York. And when he goes to California, he can use a drug that he cannot play with when he goes to Texas. That would be insane for sports. It would be insane for a sport, but we're trying to bring it together. We're trying to get everybody on board with medication, and we're trying to get everybody on board under one jurisdiction. And the trainers are scared to death when they hear federal, because the problem with the government is they don't always understand horse racing. So they don't always understand. You get somebody that's running horse racing that doesn't understand it, that can be very difficult. So it's difficult that racing does not come under one banner. I find it difficult that that each jurisdiction does it their way. And I just think it could be done better. And this is an open forum, so I want you guys to talk, and I want to talk to you about your concerns, because you guys have more concerns probably than I do. I have the concerns that I see every day and that I live with every day, but you guys are the true fans. You're here on Tuesday, you could all be at Browns Beach, right? Right now, laying in the sun if they didn't close it for chloroform, or whatever that is, whatever they've been closing that thing for. But we could all be doing something else, but you guys are here, so I'd love to hear what you have to say.
I do have a question. Because there's so much controversy with starting the horses young and all the breaking the legs, and there's stats, every day of another horse blah, blah, blah. If we had a commission, how would that help the health of the horses overall?
Who knows? Who knows? If we had a commission that did their homework and looked at things differently and adopted rules, if we had a commission and commissions are going to make mistakes. Like I said, you have to have failure in order to have success, no matter who you are. But if you try for success and you can accept the failure that you're going to come across, you can actually have great success. If we had a commission that tried to do studies about horses, I'm not so sure that running horses young, only 20% of our 2-year-olds ever make a start at 2. So people are saying, well, I mean, what's the statistic on a 4-year-old that breaks down? Did he run at 2? I'm not so sure about the youth thing. Because you know why? I go over to Caroline Street Park the other night. I'm riding my bicycle through the park, and there are 8-year-olds in full football gear doing full contact on each other. And I'm thinking, gosh, what's it doing to their little brains, and what's it doing to their heads and their shoulders and everything else? But we start our own children early in sports, in elementary school, then on to junior high school and high school. I always look at, the farm is like elementary school for a young horse. The racetrack, when they first come to me, I always tell my owners they've gotten to high school. And then when we get them over to the races, they're in college. They've graduated to college. So the question is, what's the damage we've done to children? I mean, is there a damage? I don't know if there is. I mean, I'm sure it's out there if somebody wanted to take the time to study it, but I'd like to see the relationship between starting horses early and the damage that's done later on. Because I was talking to Leroy Jolly one day at Hialeah when we used to stable down there, and Leroy Jolly is Hall of Fame. He won he won derbies, he's won everything. And he said, you know what? And this blew me away, word for word. He said, we used to get our horses, start them in April, run them 10 or 15 times as 2-year-olds, and then give them the winter off. And I thought, man, I've never seen a 2-year-old run 10 or 15 times in my 30 years. So that's just before my time. But that's the way it was. And people say in those days we had a much hardier racehorse. So I'm sure, I'd love to see the stats, and I've never seen it, but I'm sure there is just as many people that say, you know what, if we ran horses more often at 2, they would be hardier horses.
My personal opinion is that if they had the commission and they had one place to carry all the stats without people, just shoot and miss, because obviously anytime you hear a horse die and all the rescue groups and all like that, they're immediately saying, oh well, there's this problem, that problem. But I think if they had a commission to go to a go-to spot, I think that they would see the stats are different, and it's not simply that we're killing horses by running them.
I think if we had a commission, I think you're right. I think if we had a commission, the money that commission generates could go to really positive stuff as far as education goes. And I'm sure if there was a commission, the commission does not have to waste their time with training horses, and they've already, once they put all the rules and regulations out there, they could spend time making racing better. So that's my feeling. But again, there's 10 trainers out there that says Gary Contessa is an idiot. What are you saying? I disagree with that. That's just the way it is. Ma'am?
What are the obstacles? We've heard other people say a separate commission is a good idea. So there's talk about it, but there have to be obstacles or else it wouldn't happen.
Huge. Paul Post could probably tell you. But, okay, in my opinion, the obstacles are some tracks are governed by the state, which is like NYRA at the moment, okay? Some tracks are privately owned, tracks like Tampa and tracks like that. And then some are not-for-profits like Keeneland. And I think that getting them all on board, because they all have a different opinion, getting them all on board is very difficult, yet I've never seen anybody try to get them on board. I think it would be moving a small mountain in our industry to get everybody on board to accept a racing commissioner, but to me it makes so much sense. It makes a lot of sense, and that's me.
Who's going to do it?
Huh?
Who's going to do it?
You know, we have the Jockey Club. The Jockey Club is always working to make racing better. The problem is the Jockey Club hasn't had the trust of everybody in the business, and not everybody's on board. It's a very difficult thing. I would go back, and again, I don't know if that I'm smart enough for this, but I would go back and say, how do we get a commissioner in baseball? I don't believe he was always there. How did we get everybody to accept a commissioner in baseball? How did it happen? How did it materialize? How did it happen in football? How did it happen in hockey? I was at a hockey presentation the other night, and the commissioner of hockey came on, and this is typical, and I guarantee you this will happen right here, and everybody booed him. That means you're doing a good job. If everybody doesn't like you, you're probably doing your job very well. Very well. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Kathy from Equine Info Exchange.
Hey, Kathy.
We have a social media reach of 500,000, and I'm happy to include all of your events on our website.
Thank you so much.
So I just wanted to introduce myself first before asking you some maybe challenging questions.
Oh, boy. I'm just waiting for like the day after one of these things, because one day somebody's going to like really be unhappy with something that I say. But that's why I tell you, this is just my feelings. And I'm nobody. I'm just Gary Contessa, horse trainer, who likes to talk to people and share things with people. So please don't, you know, if I ever get to be racing commissioner, then you can tear me up and boo me. I'd love to be racing commissioner, by the way.
And I hope someday you are, because I can certainly contribute some best practices.
Right.
I've been to many racetracks around the country. I've been a new owner as well, and had several frustrating experiences. But help me understand, there's no longer a gaming commission or a racing and wagering board. There's now a gaming commission. My understanding is that people in the gaming commission really know nothing about horse racing. Can you please elucidate for me?
Well, there's times when it appears that way. I'll be honest with you, I don't know the Racing Commission all that well. I know that they judge us, they make some of the rules for us. I've disagreed with some of the things that they've come up with, but I've been very supportive of other things that they had. I did a event last year, a LASIX event, just an open forum like this, but it was much more heralded on LASIX for the Gaming Commission, and they didn't appear to really understand.
Sure.
So I don't know. I can't tear those guys apart. I can't say anything negative about them, but I don't know that any of the people on the Gaming Commission are really horse people that understand the business. I don't know, and they could be. They could be. So this is very, very much a gray area for me. But I know that a lot of people feel the way that you just stated.
Understood.
I don't know them well enough to even have formed an opinion.
Understand. So, for example, I would think that, like right now, Charlton Baker is running at 48%. Carlos Martin, who was 8% at Belmont, is now almost 40% with the same horses. Okay, can you help me understand that change in data? Like, how come some of these people are running so much better up here?
You know, every time somebody goes from not doing real good to doing real good, the natural scheme of things, trainers included, say, oh, that guy's cheating, or he discovered something. But my goodness, the testing is so good. It looks to me, now you said two guys that have kind of been seeing the same thing you have. Charlie Baker's a very good trainer, and he appears like he's placed his horses really well. And Carlos Martin's a very good trainer. He comes from a long line of trainers. When I was Frank Martin's assistant in the 70s, when I was Frank's assistant, Carlos Martin was this big in a diaper, and he wanted to go in between the horse's legs and everything. He's got a lot of horsemen in him, and he appears to be spotting his horses correctly. Now, if I saw a trainer rise out of obscurity after and just continue on like this, you wonder. But everybody's entitled to have a good meet. And Charlie Baker really just seems to have taken all his horses and putting them in the right places. The races are going good for him, and everything's going good. I don't smell a rat on either one of those, what you're saying. But again, the testing that we go through now is unbelievable. But we're talking about drugs in general. A testing laboratory does not know what to test for if they don't know what the drug is. I mean, what happens with drugs that improve horses dramatically is that until they get a grasp on what it is, somebody usually gets away with it for quite a while. Those two guys, I would find it hard to believe, to think those two guys were anything other than having great meets. And they deserve it. You work all week. Believe me, Gary Contessa was about 4% at Aqueduct, or maybe 8% at Aqueduct. I had the worst spring and summer of my life, and things are going a little better. I'm probably winning about 14% here. But those guys, if you have horses, you're entitled. Sometimes you do have a good meet.
Right, but from a wagering standpoint,
Yeah.
a horse like Greyjoy, who ran 5 days ago, ran again yesterday and won.
Now.
You know, I mean, so you kind of looked at patterns, and in addition to wagering, say for example, the pick fours here at Saratoga or Nyra Track.
Right.
Versus a pick fours, say for example, at Del Mar. You have similar payouts for the wins, but you have vastly different payouts. Help me understand who looks into that. I know it's a mutual's job, but help me understand a little bit, because there's a huge discrepancy in the payouts.
I'll be honest with you, I'm a gambling moron. I don't bet ever. I don't bet ever, because I gotta tell you, because I won 2,380 races in my career and lost 17,000 races, and I bet on those. I'm telling you, my owners know. Don't ask Gary. If Gary has 2 horses in a race, ask him who he likes so that you can bet on the other one. And it's like, I don't understand. I'm not big on
I
gambling.
understand, but the core of our business
Right.
is wagering and,
Right.
and transparency in wagering, because without owners
Right.
and without gamblers, we don't have a business.
And you're absolutely right, but I don't understand it. I can't comment on it. But I'll tell you one thing about Greyjoy. She asked me about a horse called Greyjoy yesterday. Yesterday, Carlos Martin ran a horse called Greyjoy, and we use what we call Ragusan sheets.
Yeah, the sheets.
Okay, so I use the sheets, and I have owners every day that want to claim horses, buy horses, and Greyjoy, 5 days rest or not, absolutely jumped off the sheets as the best horse. Yesterday I did a barn tour for like 20 people from Captain, and they said, and I didn't run a horse yesterday, and they said, do you have a tip for us today? And I said, there's one horse that jumps off the charts to me as a betting horse today, Greyjoy. And it's funny you said that. So then I called one of my owners. I said, this horse, Greyjoy, is well worth the money. We ought to claim him. We went over there, put a claim slip in for him, and Steve Asmussen outtook us for the horse. So I think Carlos had the right horse in the right spot.
But Ragusan also has a bounce theory, because I'm a sheets person too.
Right.
So you would think that it would bounce off a high.
But you know what?
So-
In looking at those Ragusan sheets, and you might want to look at them again, the second best horse in the race was a 16, and Greyjoy was a 12. So he could bounce back to a 14 or 15 and still win the race. And you know what? He probably did, because he was life and death, and he barely won. So I would say Greyjoy was just an example of Carlos Martin trying to jumpstart his career. And if you want to jumpstart your career, the place to do it is Saratoga. If you can believe me, every time Carlos Martin or Charlie Baker or myself or anybody wins the race in Saratoga, some owner's saying, maybe I should give that guy some horses, even if it comes at a price like losing your horse at the claim box.
My favorite,
You're there.
well, not my favorite topic, but the thing that concerns me are supplements and medications that might have bad side effects.
Right.
Do you ever get a listing of what the possible side effects could be with horses when you start to give them medication?
Well, our veterinarians are very good, so we don't give medication. And I think the PETA video pointed this out. We realized from the PETA video that stable that was involved in that video was given Thyroid L to every horse to get the thyroid levels up. And because of that video, Thyroid L has become a prescription drug, and if you are using it on a horse, you have to show the blood test on that horse to showing that he has a low thyroid and he needs it. You can't just give it to every horse. So when we find a problem and we realize it, we fix it. And again, most trainers don't just give out medication because it's too dangerous. So our veterinarians will say, hey, we have this muscle problem. We have this ESE, vitamin E and selenium, is a drug that is widely known for reducing lactic acid in the muscles and making your sore muscled horse travel a little better, but is also widely known to kill horses. If you put it in the vein or you administer it too quickly, and believe me, I knew trainers that killed horses with vitamin E and selenium because of a lack of knowledge, but it was on the part of the veterinarians. So again, the veterinarians, there might be a side effect to a drug, but most of the drugs, I can't think of any drugs, like the normal drugs that we use as horses that need them would be like Robaxin for a muscle sore horse. It's a muscle relaxer, or an anti-inflammatory like butazolidine, but it's always prescribed by the vet. And I don't know of a whole lot of those drugs that have terrible side effects that are worse than not treating the horse and helping the horse. So, but the veterinarians do tell us, hey, this is an experimental drug. You might want to try this, you might not. Just like people. There are people that are in a very sad state that go into a hospital and they say, hey, listen, we have a drug here, it's experimental, we'd like to try it on you, but they certainly read you the riot act, let's say. Ma'am?
You mentioned somebody in the beginning about a standing nurse. Where, in the beginning of your talk, where is that?
What were we talking about?
Where's that? You were talking about another place that does
Hialeah?
Saratoga, all different things, the venue to attract people and stuff. Where was, you said Stranick?
Stronach.
Oh, Frank Stronach owns, the Stronach Group owns the Maryland racetracks. They own Santa Anita. They own Florida. And I've seen a lot of positive things. Now, a lot of people think that there's a lot of negatives, but we're getting back to, hey, you have to have failure in order to have success. And I just see them doing a lot of positive, fan-friendly things. And I like it, and I'd like to see more of it, is what I was saying. And again, I don't work for Stronach. I don't even have horses in that Stronach, but I've watched what they've done, and they're trying. They're trying. I like what came out of Maryland the other day. They had a press release come out of Maryland where they said, listen, we're no longer trying to make money off of our food. We're going to feed the fans and we'll be happy to break even on the food, and we're going to go even one step better. We're going to make the food better. We're going to make sure that the food we give you at the right price is going to make you happy and be good food. And boy, I think that's a big statement. Every time I buy a $7 pretzel, right? I like it because those pretzels, they look better, but they're not as good as the old ones were. Can I help you, sir?
Gary, we know, we've seen it in the paper, and I don't know if this happens around the country, but there are, of course, protesters out in front of Saratoga.
Yes.
Who would just as soon see this whole sport eliminated. But in your 30-some years that you've been training, have you seen marked improvements in the safety of the horses? You
have no idea. We have gone leaps and bounds with the safety of a horse. The people that we have in charge now, okay, have really come up with rules. They have taken drugs like clenbuterol, which ran rampant in this business, and made it a 14-day withdrawal. They have made it so they did a study on Depomedrol, which really takes the inflammation out of the joint of a thoroughbred, and made it so you can't administer it within 7 days of a race. Tremendous, tremendous improvement. The things we've done for jockeys as far as rails go, and track condition, and stewards used to say to trainers, and believe me, I lived this, you put a scratch in for a horse, I'm not letting you scratch. What do you mean? My horse isn't doing well today. You have to run. That's a 5-horse field. We're going to make you run. No. If you're a trainer now and you call a steward and you say, my horse isn't doing well, I want out, you're out. We listen to the jockeys now. The jockeys canceled racing here when it got when it's rained so bad the other day. In the old days, the stewards and the management would have run down to the jockey's room and said, "What are you guys doing? It's a Saturday afternoon. How can you do this to us? You need to go out there, take a hold of your horses." No, management said, "You guys aren't happy? Then we're not going to run races." That's the way it is, because it looked like a lake out there. God knows what the footing was like underneath, and the jockeys are right in thinking, if you can't see it, how can you run over it? Who knows there's not a wash out there and a horse is going to step in a hole. So it was a good call. So safety, everything about horse racing right now is safety, and it improves every day. Every day they tell us about withdrawal times on a drug and trace amounts of drugs, and you can't do this and you can't do that, and it's all safety. I wouldn't care if they took away all medication. We need medication. A horse stable is a football team with 1,200-pound football players. I mean, they need every once in a while a Tylenol. Tylenol is a 3-day withdrawal in racing right now. They need a little help just like anybody else does, any other sports person does. Anybody here that jogs or plays tennis or plays softball, how do you feel the next day? I know how I feel the next day. I go out riding my bicycle the next day, my knee is blown up. So it's like, horses need medication, but we have gotten to a point on medication where the withdrawal times you leave no doubt that horse is running clean on race day. And the safety precautions that NYRA has taken the helm on, but even California has even gone to a new level. It's phenomenal. I mean, I love some of the new rules in racing.
Statistically, there are fewer fatalities today than there were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Would you say this?
I would say that, but you know what? I haven't seen those statistics, so you can call me on this one and say, nonsense, that's not true. But it sure feels that way. It surely feels that way. Yes?
So I want to thank you. A few years ago, I went to your new owner seminar at Aqueduct.
Right.
And it inspired me to buy a couple racehorses, one of which I bought at Fasig-Tipton after winning a pick 4. Okay. So I was watching my horse train at Belmont on the training track one morning, and I looked at the works. My trainer timed the works, and there was a big discrepancy in the trainer's work and my actual horse's work. So they had him going slower by a second.
Okay.
So having a financial services background where they, publish stock prices, et cetera, because it's printed, I had the misguided impression that it was accurate. So help me understand how the process is from timing a horse's work to having it published, to having a person wagering on it, taking that data in order to spend their money in handicapping, because it doesn't appear to me that there's no policing of that process and works get buried.
That's probably an area. Does everybody understand what she's asking? She's asking about clocking horses in the morning and publish workouts and whatnot. That's probably an area where there's a lot of room for improvement. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you why. This bottle of water just doesn't want to stay. I was fortunate. You are making me nervous every time you raise your hand. I was in Japan once, and every saddle towel has a microchip in it. So every horse that breezes, it passes a pole that works in sync with the microchip, and they know exactly what horse it is that's breezing. And NYRA actually tried to set this up a few years ago. They have the poles in place on the training track at Belmont, but it never reached fruition. It hasn't happened. But if you go into a clocker stand, there's 3 or 4 overworked guys trying to clock horses. Oh my, there's 1 3/4. And a lot of times, quite often, you have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 horses breezing at the same time, and a clocker he's only got 2 hands, and there's only 3 or 4 of them up there. So a lot of times, the first eighth might be a guesstimate, the last eighth might be a guesstimate, or sometimes they just have to call you and say, "Did you work a horse this morning? How did he go?" Because there's just way more horses working than there are clockers.
Right, but even when my trainer says this horse worked in this time and I get a totally different time, wouldn't that at least be called under, some
Well-
suspicion? Or shouldn't somebody be fined or fired for something like that? Isn't
Well, if you're really angry about it, maybe, but let's just put it this way. Let's just say your horse worked a half a mile, and the clocker only picked him up at the 3/8 pole, and he got the last 3/8 in 36. The guesstimate is going to be to add 13, because that's a legitimate first eighth of a mile under a hold, 13. So the clocker might print 49, when in effect your horse might have gone 11 the first eighth, and he went 47. The clocker doesn't know that. So I don't know how you would correct that, since we're kind of on an honor system of sorts. With human error, trainer. The only one who gets the work right is the trainer. When I'm working a horse, if I'm working 3 horses at the same time, I make sure they're separate. I tell my riders they're all on walkie-talkie. Listen, stand out a minute. This guy's going first. Stand out. This horse is going second. I click at the pole. I click at the wire. I have the right time. If the clocker asks me what I got, that's fine. But I called it in. Who knows if he was watching my horse during the whole work? So I don't know how we would improve that, other than think of the technology we have today. We have such unbelievable technology. Why can't every horse have a microchip, maybe even placed in their ear, where they get to the kill pen and zzz, wait a minute, that horse is so-and-so, blah, blah. Europe has the passports for horses that are leaving the country and everything else. Our technology is such that we could do it. It's just something else that, hey, it might start right here today, that we're going to talk about technology that's going to, that a horse will have a lifetime. I have a Labrador Retriever, and the kid that worked for me at my farm loved this dog. And he said, please, can I have her? And we have like 6 of them. So I said, man, you love her so much, I'm going to give her to you. And I gave him the Labrador Retriever. And 4 years later, I get a call from a veterinarian in Chatham, New York, saying, I got your dog here. And I'm like, what dog? And he tells me who the dog is, because she had a chip in her ear, a microchip. And I'm like, oh, well, I know the owner. He's a really good kid. He goes, no, this old man brought her in. I'm like, okay. So I said, can I talk to him? I talked to the old man. He says, I bought her on eBay. He bought my dog that I gave away. But you know what? He was a nice guy. He loved that dog. But it just goes, we could do it with dogs. How do we not do it with horses, which is amazing? I mean, we really should, but the technology is there. Whether we put it in the saddle pads, whether we put it in the horse's ear, whatever we do, the technology is there. And we have less technology in that racetrack than we should. We're just starting to get it. I just saw all the cameras in there, and somebody said, hey, let me know what time my horse is going out. I'm going to watch it on TV. I'm like, you're kidding me. How do you do that? They actually have a camera on the training track that you can go on the website and watch horses train. So I said, yeah, your horse is going out at 8 o'clock. I'll put a red blinker on him so you know it's him. And they watched on their computer. So it's coming, but boy, there's so much more technology out there that they haven't even touched yet, which would be awesome. Be awesome. Anybody else have any thoughts about technology or horses? Come on, I know you.
Withdrawal time, is that before you train them or race them?
Say that again?
Withdrawal time on the drugs, is that before you train them or before you race them?
Well, withdrawal time on drugs, on prescription medication that we may have to use in the course of training a horse, withdrawal times are set up for race day. And we have a list. It is this long. It is put out by the Gaming Commission, and it's like this group 7 days, this group 6 days, this group 5 days. And make no mistake, if you're wrong, if you're too close and you're a trainer, you're going on vacation for X amount of time, because they test down to nanograms. I had a positive test a few years ago in Florida for 2 nanograms of cocaine in a horse. So my horse came up positive for 2 nanograms of cocaine. Put it into perspective, an airline pilot who must get tested once a month in the state of Florida, the threshold is 150 nanograms. of cocaine because of the environmental contamination. It's in our currency. It's in how much of our currency sat in the hands of a drug dealer in bales of money. You know what I mean? It's the way it is. And it turns out there were 29 positives in Florida that year for 10 nanograms or less. And I mean, there was a year I'll never forget, it was maybe 10 years ago, Todd Pletcher, Mark Henning, all those guys had nanograms, Billy Badgett, they all had X amount of nanograms of cocaine positive. So our tests are very finite. A nanogram is 1/30,000th of a gram. Now, when a lawyer was trying to put it into perspective for me, he said 1/30,000th of a gram will fit on the head of a ballpoint pen. And that comes up positive in the system of a 1,200-pound horse. So that's how incredible our testing is right now. And a lot of people, when we get called, when a positive gets called for anything, they call nanograms. It's almost always nanograms. It's never higher. It's always 50 nanograms, 100 nanograms, 20 nanograms, but it's all of that is 30,000ths of a gram, whatever that number is.
Do they test for cocaine? I mean, people
Oh, yeah.
give horses cocaine?
Well, I don't think so. I hope not. I hope not, but if somebody gave, again, I don't know what cocaine would do to the metabolism of a horse, but don't people jump off of buildings doing cocaine? And isn't it an amphetamine? So if it's an amphetamine, why wouldn't somebody try and give it to them if they could get away with it?
How does even that small amount get in the horse?
Well, how does that amount? Well, that's the great question, especially if you're the trainer of that horse. But what I've been told is a groom who happens to be doing cocaine, our help doesn't get tested, has a fragment on his finger. He's handling the horse, he's tying his tongue, he's washing his privates. You know, it goes in through any number of places. A person, anyone who is using cocaine may urinate in the corner of a stall. Believe me, that's where the help urinates, in the stall. And no matter how many times you tell them not to, and that is in their urine, and the horse eats hay or straw off the floor, and there's a little bit in there. Somebody had it on their hands, and they touched a door, you know, in between using it, that it's a powdery substance, it gets on their hands or whatever, it transfers to the door or the wall of a stall, and horses lick and chew wood all the time. I mean, there's so many ways for it to get in, but when it happens to you and they call the positive, you're like, I don't know how that happened. You know, I certainly didn't give it to him, and if I gave it to him, it would have been 800 nanograms, not 2. I wouldn't know how to give 2 nanograms of cocaine to a horse.
I do know of an incident, though, when I was president of the 4-H in Ontario County, in their program. There was a foolish person. The gal had horses at her farm, and she had a party, and whoever it was gave the horse cocaine, and it was not pretty. It killed the horse. It was just an awful, awful thing. So
Wow.
we had to ban, you know, that
Anything.
could no longer ride in the 4-H. She was banned from the whole season.
I have a great story, because you guys might understand. I trained horses in the 90s, maybe it was 2000, for Joe Klecko and Ted Banker. They both played for the Jets. Joe Klecko was a famous, defensive player. Ted Banker played for the Jets for a short period of time, and then he went to the Cleveland Browns. So I run a horse for them. It finishes second, and lo and behold, a week later, I get called in for a caffeine positive. I'm like, you got to be kidding me! Caffeine? We know better than to have caffeine around a horse. It's a very obvious positive. Nobody's allowed in the barn with coffee, anything that could possibly be a caffeine positive. So they do an investigation. In the course of the investigation, if you own a horse and your trainer gets a positive, you're going to talk to the trainer, the groom, the hot walker. They talk to everybody. So they talk to Ted Banker and Joe Klecko, and they're like, "What are you talking about? We gave the horse a power bar. We always eat a power bar before we play football." Now, my day watchman My day watchman was in the barn, when those two guys come in, two guys that are, 260 pounds, muscles. This guy is like from Ecuador. He's not going to say nothing to those guys. They're petting their horse. He's not even going to go near those guys. And they're letting that horse lick on a power bar. Oh, this is great. Hey, we play much better football when we eat a power bar. And nobody said anything to me. I wasn't even there. I don't even know if I was in the country that day. And sure enough, it came out. And those guys admitted to it. They lost the purse. And Gary Contessa got a 14-day suspension, and that's the way it is, because there is a trainer responsibility rule. Doesn't matter if we figure out what happened, you got to do days. You're responsible. Doesn't matter if it happens at Belmont when you're in Saratoga, you're responsible. It doesn't matter if you go on vacation and it happens, you're responsible. So, perfect. The result of the investigation, we came up with the answer, and I still had to do days. That's just the way it is. And you want to know something? While you're sitting home for those 14 days watching your horses run under somebody else's name, you're busy thinking up ways to keep Joe Klecko and Ted Banker from feeding the next power bar. But we have a new system in place after that.
But also things like minoxidil, right? For example, Gary, so say, for example, a guy's using minoxidil on
Right.
his head, and then he pets his horse.
Right.
I mean, that could show up as a positive.
Anything that we use, listen, you're going to think I had a lot of positives, but in 35 years, I did have some. Okay? I had another positive one time for, I think it was Procaine. And my Procaine, how could I have and it was like nanograms, 1 or 2 nanograms of Procaine. Here comes the investigators. They go through my office, nothing. They go through the barn, nothing. They go to the groom who's got, his own box and his little stuff, right? And there in his box is Walgreens triple antibiotic ointment, but the one with Procaine in it that stops the pain on a cut. You can buy it for $1.69 over the counter. It's got Procaine in it. And he was putting it in the cut in a horse's heel. He had it in his room. He was using it on himself. He needed something to put in that cut. He never asked me, never asked my assistant. He put the Walgreens triple antibiotic cream, which as itself would be no problem whatsoever, puts it in the heel of the horse. Guess what? Gary Contessa, 14 days. Didn't matter. We found the problem, but that's my responsibility. So now my assistant trainers go through the barn every other day through the boxes to make sure that doesn't happen again. But we have so much exposure, it could happen. That same guy could be putting it on a cut on his wrist and petting the horse, and the horse licks it, and he's got the same thing, and he never put it on the horse. So that's how our testing is pretty damn good. Marion, sorry, you're next.
Just want to add one quick thing to that several years ago I typed up a paper for a nurse who was doing a study on why drug testing for all humans and animals should be as good as possible and people shouldn't jump to conclusions. She did a study of a naval base. I can't think of the name of it, the one that's in Chesapeake Bay, big one. And in one particular morning, 3,000 people, they did random drug testing. 3,000 people tested positive for heroin use. And they all got canned in a single day. And then 2 days later, they all got their jobs back. They had all had poppy seed bagels.
Right.
And a poppy seed
We heard
bagel
that.
will make you test positive for heroin use.
Oh, wow.
And don't think poppy seeds aren't
Yeah.
all over the racetrack, So one way or another.
Yeah, so we need to be careful.
Yeah, and that goes back to my thought about the Racing Commission. I'll never forget, Tom Amos came up with a positive a few years ago, and I could be wrong on what the drug was, but I believe it was a muscle relaxer. And he got 60 days in Louisiana for this muscle relaxer, Robaxin. If I came up positive in New York for Robaxin, I might do 7 reduced to 5 for good behavior. It's not treated, and it's the same drug, same level, but it's Louisiana's view versus New York's view. Again, if cooler minds prevailed and we had one umbrella, we could, you would have Tom Amos doing 5 days instead of 60 days, and he fought that to death. He fought that forever, and you lose. You can't win because the positive is there. It's in the bloodstream. It's in the urine. There's nothing you can do about it. But that's the disparity between all these different venues, and that's a good example of it.
If you have your venues that way and he's got 60 days in Louisiana, because of the separation and no commission, can he then bump over and run in Florida and not have that?
No. You get a suspension. One thing that's universal is suspensions.
Okay.
Every jurisdiction honors a suspension, jockey and trainer. You're gone. So that's amazing that we honor the suspension, but we don't honor the drug rules.
Yeah.
But if we had a commission, maybe they would say, hey, 60's right, 5 is wrong. That's okay. But then I can tell you right now, trainers would say, well, screw that drug. I'm not using it anymore because I ain't going to take a chance on 60. If everything was in place and it was universal, it would be a lot easier to train a horse by knowing what's okay and what's not okay.
Every time I tune into a NYRA board meeting, we hear about what they're doing, what they've done to enhance fan.
You have to go to a NYRA board meeting, right, Paul? Go ahead.
What they've done to enhance the fan experience, and they also talk about, especially Belmont Festival. So what are you saying? What else should they be doing to improve Belmont and Aqueduct, especially Belmont?
What I never see is fan interaction with the trainers, jockeys. I think the players need to be doing what I'm doing. I think this place, you could maybe pack this place if you had Todd Pletcher here and Billy Mott and talk about some of those grade 1 wins, whatever the people want to talk about. Or I think that it has to be a group effort. I think the trainers, I think people here, and probably everywhere, thirst to hear more about the business. You're here because you want to hear more about this business. You enjoy it. You like it. I think the players, how nice would it be to have Javier Castellano talking to you for an hour? Todd Pletcher talking I got questions for Todd Pletcher. Todd Pletcher's had quite an interesting life. Wayne Lucas up here, a guy who's done it all, and we're getting to the point where we're not going to see Wayne in a few more years. He's getting really old. Let's hear what he has to say. Let's enrich the lives of the fans by enlightening them. And it's the trainers. Every trainer has a story. Every trainer has something they can do to make this experience even better for the fans. Every jockey, you want to talk about medication? Let's have one day where we have the veterinarians talking to you guys. You want to talk about the gaming commission? I don't know anything about those guys. How would you like to call one day here for an hour? The gaming commission is going to talk to the public. I can think of so many things to make this place better. And then a few years ago, I was asked by Richard Fields to evaluate Suffolk Downs for him. He had just bought Suffolk Downs, and we were trying to make it. Suffolk Downs has such a great history, and it just fell by the wayside, and it became a non-issue. And they were just, when you have a place like that, in a venue like that, Boston, which is one of the greatest sports venues, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, rabid sports fans, you have to tap in. You have to not sleep until you get done. You have to tap into that market. I want to know what those people are thinking about. I want to know what they want to do on a Saturday and Sunday, and I want to bring it to the racetrack and make it happen here. If they're all going to auto shows, I'm going to have an auto show over here. If they want autograph signings, if the New York Giants team is going to sign autographs, let's have it over here. Let's have it over here. If one of these teams, God forbid, the Mets make it to the World Series again, let's have a big party and bring in all the old Mets players and let's sign autographs let's find out what the people in the surrounding area want and let's bring it to the racetrack because it is a sports venue. Let's make it happen. What makes the people come to Saratoga is one of the great unknowns. But boy, when I come in on a Saturday morning and that line is all the way down to Route 87 at 5:30 in the morning to make the run for the picnic tables, I say, man, are we doing this right? Is this amazing? Little kids out there in tents waiting for the gate to open with their parents. It's just amazing, something you never see. You know, something you never see. But if you commit, if the experience is great, and you can leave the racetrack, you can leave Aqueduct saying, man, that was great. Or you can leave Belmont saying, man, that was great. That's a start. To me, that's a start.
How can the flat track integrate and support the trotting track? Because right now, the trotters are just kind of falling by the wayside. And, you know, a lot of the places are closing and this and that. They're not getting the recognition that they used to have as a family fun day. How can the two industries come together? Because they're still under NYRA.
Right.
And they are brother, sister, and how can they come together?
The harness industry has nothing to do with NYRA. NYRA doesn't govern
Right,
nor
my understanding it was, but-
no, it doesn't. And they're oil and water.
Right, but
The
isn't there a
thoroughbred
way
people
that you're complimenting each
don't
other?
care for them. They don't care for the thoroughbred people. But it would be nice to see it come
So, yeah,
together.
to
You
compliment,
know,
especially here in Saratoga.
it would be nice to see them compliment, but they have the casino and we don't.
Right.
So they're not doing, you know.
That's a great part of this place, not going in there and not seeing slot machines.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of Saratoga.
Every year, and it's fantastic.
Yep.
You go to Central
But harness track and thoroughbred track are oil and water, and they usually button heads. What's that?
Two different mentalities.
It is. It
Right,
really
I
is.
mean, at some point, you know, it's.
You want to know something? I came up under trotters at Roosevelt Raceway when I was a kid, but again, even back then, it was oil and water.
Yeah.
It really was, and it was never
Be a way-
a happy marriage. And I didn't see any way for it to be a happy marriage back then either. You have another question?
Please.
Yeah. So far, have I disappointed you?
No,
Good.
In fact, you encouraged me.
Good.
Through your new owner seminar. To
Beautiful.
Get into horse racing, so thank you. So you had mentioned, and I completely agree with you, that NYRA has to emulate best practices. I see you're a Mets fan. I go to Yankees games.
I like pain.
My seat at Legends and my experience at Yankee Stadium, vastly different from New York. I go to Del Mar. I'm said, hey, I'm an owner. I'm greeted by a man named Walt. I'm in a private room with a buffet, and here's drinks, and we're so happy to have you at Del Mar Cafe. Right? So, come to NYRA tracks, $7 pretzel, $12 fruit bowl. Where other trainers say I could spend $1 million and still be disrespected. So I would love to see a better owner experience because we need more owners in this sport. We need more new owners in this sport. I'm confused about Lynn LaRocca's role as far as customer experience. There could be so much that doesn't cost money
Right.
that could be done. I agree with you.
Well said.
So help me understand what some great next steps would be to make that happen and to make owners feel important.
Well, again, I always say, and I've never been able to, like I don't run the track. I don't have anything to do with NYRA. So I can't tell anybody what I would do for NYRA. I can't say. But I think racing has to be, I leave a Mets game, even when they lose, I had a good time.
Right.
I leave Disney World, I'm tired, but I had a great time. I just would like to see a Disney type make people, fans and owners and everybody feel good mentality. And I don't know why it's not that way. I don't know why when I walk into Saratoga, there's not somebody saying thank you. Why there's not somebody thanking me for coming and somebody thanking me when I leave.
Or how can I help you?
Right, how can I help you? They have that little booth that says, how can I help you? But you have to go looking for them.
Or even a betting window. Okay, I mean, I do all my wagering online, but we've all been behind a person who knows not what they're doing.
Right.
Even a beginning betting window saying, hey, with a person who knows what they're doing and is fan-friendly to help educate someone who's new at wagering.
Well, there's,
They do have
They
booths
have,
all,
they
yeah,
have a booth, but they don't have a window.
Right.
So that I've seen, where you're actually changing,
Yep.
placing the wager.
this is all on that whole list of things that we all think could make racing better.
And it would be great. So
Yep.
I just wish someone like Lynn LaRocca, who's making $250,000 a year, could do a better job.
She is?
Yes.
I don't know anything about her. I have no comment on that, but I think you're correct in a lot of the things you're saying, and so am I, and I think that it could be done better. I don't think that we treat racing like it's a venue where people are supposed to have a really good time, except here. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I'm going to tell a really quick, funny story about how owners are treated. So, my daughter, as you know, Gary, kind of was doing an internship with Gary, which has been a phenomenal experience for my 17-year-old. And so I picked her up one day, and I had promised a friend of mine that I'd get them one of the duffel bag handouts that they would do. I said, okay, I'll grab you one when I'm there. I'll make my poor daughter go wander about after she's been at work all morning and find you a duffel bag. So we go to, the gates, whatever, to get this thing, handing out bags. People have stacks of them, and they're off, and the duffel bags they give away. And so she goes up there, and they won't give her one. And she says, well, why not? And so they said to her, you have to have a paid admission to get one. So she says, okay. So she comes back to the car, gets me, I have to park. I go up there, I go, I have, an owner's, thing, can I just get a bag? She said, you have to pay the $7 and she has to get online.
Yeah.
That's the way they treated me.
I know.
And they were nervous about it. And I thought to myself, wow. I said, you know what, that's fine, here's the $7. I was fine with that. But it was just the tone and the way that they made my poor daughter stand in line again after she had already gotten to the head of the line and they wouldn't give her one with her ID.
Now, my feeling is there's a way to put you through all of that and make you feel good. She could have done it nice, but we don't teach. We're not teaching nice to our employees.
It's customer service.
That's true.
So I gave her the $7. Poor Katerina stood online for like 45 minutes, got the stupid bag, thank God that I'm nice to my friends, and came back to the car, and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Are you
I agree.
kidding me?
I agree.
So that's just one example of how, they just don't care.
Right. I never leave Disney feeling like anybody has been mean to me.
And nobody feels
Right.
right, exactly.
And I own an arcade in Colony. It's called Zero Gravity. It's a laser tag place, birthday parties and everything. I own that. And I guarantee you, if you ever go in there and you use my name and you want to play laser tag, you're free. Everybody here today. But I'm telling you, I think my employees will treat you really good because I insist on it. So, and I wish, and I can't tell the NYRA employees how to treat people, but, again, it's a mindset, and it's taught, and it should be taught. I think it could be taught. But again, I don't run NYRA, so it might be impossible. I don't know. I don't know the inner workings of NYRA, but that's what I'd like to see. That's what I'd love to see. I'd love to see people leave every racetrack, every NYRA racetrack, and say, man, that was a great day. I had a great time today.
So their public relations
Yeah.
committee, group, or whatever, is the one that needs to be educated.
But I don't even know who they are. I don't know.
Swin the Rock,
Right,
that
for-
customer experience.
Right, for proper customer service is what.
Swin the Rock.
Between the races, I mean, even 5 minutes over the course of a day would save an hour, give folks more action.
I was there when they decided to extend the amount of time between the races, and that's all about betting stuff. I don't get it. I don't understand it. It probably is a little difficult because the horses have to go to a holding barn, then they have to organize over at the holding barn, then they have to walk all the way from the holding barn, which is on the 3/8 pole, all the way to the paddock. Then we have to get the valets from the race before. I don't know that it can be done a whole lot faster. There's a lot of walking involved, especially, in the jocks too. They have to walk back to the jocks room. Valets have to walk back. I think it's a little tough. I think we're kind of stuck with the times between, but the cool thing is there's a lot of simulcasting going on in between. So if you want to do this, if you're waiting for Saratoga races and gambling is your thing, you could certainly do Gulfstream and Delaware and everything else in between. One thing they seem to have gotten right is they've separated all the racetracks. So you're not running, I can remember the days where 3 tracks would be running all at the same time, and they seem to have that, they've gotten that done well. They've managed to separate. Yes?
Going back kind of to the potentiality, so to speak, of working with the racing commissioner and the racing board, I'm kind of curious what your take is personally on how you like to see that formation process elapse. Obviously, if you look kind of on a national or centralized board, you're going to have a difference by region. The Saratoga won't have the same opinions or concerns as a Gulfstream or a Santa Anita would. Would you like to see it structured where you have a commissioning or board structure evenly split with representatives by region to kind of balance those concerns? Or would you want to see it assigned on a little bit more of a random basis?
I think if you have the right people on that board, on that commission, they're gonna know the pulse of all these people. They're gonna get to know it. Maybe, and again, you might have somebody here in this room right now that disagrees with this. Again, this is Gary Contessa. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but maybe being more random, you have a better mindset for managing because you are more random, and you have, instead of having that, well, this is the way we have to do it here, and this is the way we have to do it here, and this is the way we have to do it here. Maybe random would be better, and I think that's what I'd like to see. You know, not anybody that has any attachment to any one particular region, just people, a generic oversight so that you can get proper, you know, so that the oversight is proper and even-handed.
As kind of a follow-up to that, this kind of delves off in a little bit of a direction in terms of the way we see racing here itself, kind of branching off from Saratoga. To kind of make a parallel connection to baseball, I think what makes Saratoga and some of the venues like Saratoga so special is the fact that not only is the history in that atmosphere so palpable, a la, say, a Fenway or a Wrigley Park in baseball, but it also becomes part of the incorporated experience. You can't isolate the racing itself from the history, or vice versa, just like you would at a Fenway or Wrigley as compared to the modern venue. Do you think looking at racing as a whole, even for some of the newer venues and the way they've modernized like Belmont, do you think that kind of placing more of an emphasis on the history of the sport, bringing that back to the fans and keeping that encouragement alive, helps give racing a little bit more of a connected nature? I mean, you look at a baseball, it's not considered the national pastime, it's our national pastime.
Right.
And I think kind of having that parallel to racing from a historical standpoint keeps that alive a little bit.
I think absolutely. I think you have to have the history. Saratoga is all about the history. Saratoga is phenomenal history. The Historical Society here won't let Saratoga screw up anything. Won't let Naira screw up any of the historical stuff, which is what you got to have. And I mean, getting back to Richard Fields at Suffolk Downs, the Beatles played there. How significant was Suffolk Downs? The Beatles played at Suffolk Downs. You know, they played at Shea Stadium and they played at Suffolk Downs. How significant is that? But there's not one picture of the Beatles playing at Suffolk Downs in Suffolk Downs. I would have exploited that to death. I mean, the history, it's all about history. The history is so great, and the history is so great here. And we have that same great history at Belmont, too. You know, it's just incredible, the horses that have gone over that track. Yeah, this is it. This is it. This is the nucleus of racing, Saratoga. You know, I was talking to a group of politicians one day, and they asked me to speak. You know, and I said, you know what says the whole thing to me? They picked Saratoga for the Hall of Fame. They didn't pick Del Mar, they didn't pick Chicago, they didn't pick down by Belmont. They picked Saratoga to have the Hall of Fame, and that tells the whole story. Saratoga is the nucleus of horse racing in the history of horse racing. I'm amazed by Saratoga. I get blown away. I hear new stories about Saratoga all the time. It blows me away. How about they finished the grandstand in 1864 at the height of the Civil War? They finished the grandstand, 1864. how the heck did they do that? You look up at the rafters, and they got those little strips of wood that they put in one by one for the roof. It's amazing. It's amazing what history we have here. It's just incredible. Horses buried on the infield, horses that have been over that track, some of the great rivalries that we've seen. The history is there. And Saratoga certainly presents it well. They really do. Well, I can't thank you guys enough for coming. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. I think you do this for me. You know, I'm just glad somebody showed up. If there were 4 people over here, if there was 4 or 5 people over here, I would really enjoy talking to them too. But it's really nice that you guys make this happen. You just want to hear more and you want to do more on your day off. You guys could be doing so many better things. Look how beautiful it is out there.
We appreciate that you do this for us,
Well-
because there's not many or any that really do this, and so
I'd like to see everybody do
I
it.
think it would be great.
But I think my peers probably think I'm nuts. You know, I'll be honest with you. What is he doing that for? You know, but I get a lot of enjoyment, and the fact that you guys enjoy it and you keep coming back, I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome. Huh? Hey, and next week, I just want to say, next week we're going to meet at that stand over there and do a walking tour of the Oklahoma side. If anybody's interested, I hope it doesn't rain, but the Oklahoma side, the history, is going to blow your mind. I'm telling you. I'm going to show you where they used to race horses over there, and you're not going to believe it. You're going to think it's a road. I mean, the fences are still up where they used to hold races in Oklahoma, and I didn't even know about it. I used to gallop horses in the 70s around there, not knowing that before that grandstand was built, they were racing horses on this side and not on that training track around the barn area. It's really cool. So there's a lot of history over there for people that want to see a little history. It's pretty cool.
People should meet at 11 here?
11 o'clock over at the Whitney viewing stand, which, by the way, is the exact replica. I said, the first time I saw the Whitney viewing stand, I said, what the hell is that? And I could not imagine the significance of them building that stand over there on the training track. Well, if you look at it, and you look at old pictures of the racetrack, that exact stand was right at the wire in 1864 when they built that track, and the stewards would stand in it. The exact same design, I mean, to the T, that exact same stand. The stewards would be in there, and you'd have a guy who maybe drank too much bourbon or maybe was pretty normal, calling the winner second, third. I mean, how many times are we wrong when we see a photo finish? In the old days, I wonder how many times they were wrong. There was no photo finish. It was like the guys were standing in that stand right at the wire calling the races, which was pretty cool. Very cool. Thank you.